before we start the video, just a quick interjection regarding Israel, or the children of Israel, being the children of God. We've gone over this verse before, but I wanted to reiterate it along with some commentary from Wycliffe Bible Commentary before the video begins. We're going to run to Exodus 4:21 and read 4:21 through 23. And the Lord said unto Moses, When thou goest to return into Egypt, see that thou do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in thine hand. But I will harden his heart, that he shall not let the people go. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. Again, they are the firstborn. They are the sons of God. Genesis 6:1-2, seeing as how that's what we're going to be hitting. Wycliffe Bible Commentary is what was an anchor for me in writing the book. It gave me the confidence to go forward. It begins with sin and the flood. 6:2, Genesis 6:2. The sons of God, B'nai Elohim, daughters of men. Wickedness was increasing on every hand. Cain's descendants became exceedingly godless and pagan. A powerful race of giants called Nephilim came into prominence. The verb napal, N-A-P-A-L, to fall, has been considered the source of the noun, and so these gigantic creatures have been thought of as fallen ones. The reference to the B'nai Elohim has occasioned marked differences of opinion among scholars. Elohim is plural in form. It is usually translated God, but it can be translated gods with a lowercase g, as, for instance, when it refers to the gods of the heathen neighbors of Israel. It can also denote the heavenly circle of beings in close fellowship with Jehovah, residents of heaven, assigned specific duties as God's assistants. See Job 1:6. In some cases in Scripture, sons of God may be identified with angels or messengers. Jesus is the Son of God in a unique sense. Believers are called the sons of God because of their relationship to Him in the Old Testament. However, sons of God are a special class of beings that make up the heavenly court. The reference to the marriages of B'nai Elohim to the daughters of men has been dealt with in many ways. To translate it literally would make the passage say that the members of the heavenly company selected choice women from the earth and set up marriage relationships with them literally and actually. This can be the only interpretation of Job 1:6. There, the B'nai Elohim were plainly the members of God's heavenly court. S.R. Driver maintains that this is the only legitimate and correct sense that can be accepted. Jesus' reply to the Sadducees in Matthew 22:30 seems to make this view untenable. He said that the angels neither marry nor are given in marriage. The statement in Genesis 6:2 makes it clear that permanent marriage is described. Women were chosen and forced to become parties to the unnatural relationship. Bible students who have rejected the solution have resorted to other explanations. Some have said that a union of Seth's godly line with Cain's godless descendants is described. Still others hold that these words refer to marriage between persons of the upper class of society and those of a lower, less worthy class. In light of the facts and the accurate rendering of the words of the text, we conclude that some men of the heavenly group, angels or messengers, actually took wives of the earthly women. They used superior force to overpower them to make the conquest complete. The sons of God were irresistible. Please reference then Peter 2:4 and Jude 6. Angels, the Gospel Truth. Chapter 7, Thy Seed and Her Seed, the Reign of the Fallen. Besides the fall of Adam in the Garden of Eden at the hands of Satan, possibly nothing else did more harm than the arrival of the fallen angels or the Nephilim in the beginning of Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6, 1-4. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. And they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with men, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. The era following life after the Garden of Eden, and the growth of the human population is not mentioned in detail in the Bible. Most importantly, chapter 6 of Genesis is rarely discussed or preached within Christian circles and churches. The first few verses of chapter 6 are intentionally omitted. They discuss how wicked man was, and how God wished he never created us in the first place. And everyone skips to Noah. Noah was certainly an incredible person. Noah was a promised one, almost messianic. But there were over 1,600 years between the creation of Adam and Eve and the flood. Genesis 6:4 bites hard into our human history with tenacity during the days of the pre-flood, declared by in the earth in those days, and after the flood, depicted by the words, and also after that, possibly referring to after the flood. The fallen angelic campaign against humanity has never had an end. Remember, we mentioned at the beginning of the book the topic as to why the young David, when entering into battle with the giant Goliath, shouted that the battle was the Lord's. He discussed that David had many battles that certainly the Lord had assisted him in. Why was the battle with Goliath the Lord's? Yes, Goliath raged against God and Israel. That is true, but there is much more. The war was long before David. Remember, we discussed previously Exodus 15, verse 3. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Let's clear the air and hear straight from Jesus in this regard. Jesus gave a parable that is very important to our discussion. If the parable is difficult to understand in the beginning, have patience. Jesus explains in the second half of the parable of the wheat and the tares. Matthew chapter 13, verse 24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up, and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Then Jesus sent the multitude away, and went into the house. And his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Maybe you heard the above parable from an evangelist or learned about it at church. This explanation has always been that the wheat is a believer and a tare is a non-believer. That is simple enough. Of course, nobody wants to be a tare. Everybody wants to avoid being gathered up by the reaper angels and thrown into hell. However, there appears to be less symbolism and much more reality to the discussion. Jesus stated the good seed are the children of the kingdom. Are the children of the kingdom her seed? And the tares are the children of the wicked one, thy seed? Let us read on with Apostle. In Matthew 15, Jesus has made the scribes and the Pharisees angry in regards to the washing of hands. 15, verse 12. Then came his disciples and said unto him, Knowest that the Pharisees were offended after they heard this saying? But he answered and said, Every plant which my Father hath not planted shall be rooted up. Let them alone. They be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. Interesting. Jesus told a parable. He then translated the parable, then applied it to the Pharisees of his time who were not children of Isaac. They were tares, or Gentiles. Those that are not in step with the truth, we'll call them non-believers, so that nobody knows or is offended. This is from the Gospel of Matthew, a book that the clergy says has the good news for me and you. Obviously, Matthew has good news, but it is the gospel to the Jews, repeatedly called the gospel of the kingdom. Jesus preached the good news of the kingdom all the way through the four gospels because the kingdom was at hand. Heaven had come down, and he was it. He was the good news. However, at that point in time, based upon the previous verses, is that the gospel for you? Not just yet. Yes, it was still good news, but Jesus was still alive. Jesus has not been rejected by Israel. Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 2, verses 7 through 8, "But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom which God ordained before the world unto our glory, which none of the princes of this world knew. For if they had known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. These are the sons of Adam, as actually listed in Genesis 5, verse 1. Most Christians know this area of the Bible as the begats, which means to father, and we'll skip this list. Please read on, and you shall see why you will not skip it in the future. Adam lived 930 years, begat Seth at age 130, Adam's age 130. Seth lived 912 years, begat Enosh, age 105, Adam's age 235. Enosh lived 905 years, begat Kenan, age 90, Adam's age 325. Kenan lived 910 years, begat Mahalalel, age 70, Adam's age 375. Mahalalel lived 895 years, begat Jared, age 65, Adam's age 440. Jared lived 962 years, begat Enoch, age 162, Adam's age 602. Enoch 365 lived 365 years, begat Methuselah, age 65, Adam's age 667. Methuselah lived 969 years, begat Lamech, age 187, and Adam's age 85. Adam died 76 years later, never seeing the next stage. The flood. 1,630 years after the creation of Adam, Genesis 5:28. And Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, This same shall comfort us in our work and in the toil of our hands, which cometh because of the ground which Jehovah had cursed. From the Mystery of the Late Chuck Missler, www.khouse.org, is a hidden message from what Chuck called the Gospel of Genesis. Chuck's ministry took each name of the genealogy of Adam and simply referenced the Hebrew definition and discovered a hidden gospel message. Contemplate the following. Adam, man. Seth means appointed. Enosh means mortal man. Kenan means sorrow. Mahalalel means the blessed God. Jared, shall come down. Enoch means teaching, dedicated, faithful. Methuselah, his death shall bring. Lamech means the despairing. Noah, we discussed, meant comfort. Then you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Man appointed as a mortal man, a man of sorrows. The blessed God shall come down, teaching, dedicated, and faithful. His death shall bring the despairing comfort. Let's read that again. Man appointed mortal man. Sorrow. The blessed God shall come down, teaching, dedicated, faithful. His death shall bring the despairing comfort. It is amazing to see how the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ can be found in places you might least expect. Since someone went to all this trouble to find a hidden message in the genealogy list, I thought it would be imperative to investigate the definition of the genealogy of Cain, listed in Genesis 4, verses 17 through 22. What occurred were two possible outcomes. The first outcome might easily be seen as the suffering of Jesus on the cross. Definitions from www.abrahampublications.com. You'll see a listing beginning with Cain. Cain is a reed, as we discussed previously, which also means brought in. Enoch, teaching, dedicated, faithful. Irad means alert. Mehuiel, strike, wipe out. Methushel, combative, male. Where is God? Smell of death. Lamech, depressed, humiliated. Ada, booty, prey, ornament. Jabal, watercourse, trumpet. Jubal, stream or ram's horn, blast horn. Zillah, tingle, quiver, grow dark, whirring shadow. Tubal Cain, world economy and interaction. A reed was brought in teaching, dedicated and faithful, alert to a strike. He was wiped out by a combative male, and he cried out from the cross, "Where is God?" The smell of death was approaching. Depressed, humiliated was the booty, the prey, and the ornament of heaven. But like a mighty watercourse moving through a trumpet, a stream with the blast of a ram's horn, he sent Satan and his dominions away tingling, quivering, growing dark, a whirring shadow, becoming the world economy and its interaction. The second possible outcome is a depiction of what happened to the fallen angels during the reign of the fallen for 1,636 years, from the formation of Adam to the flood of Noah. They were brought in, deceived by Satan. They were dedicated and faithfully bound to each other, teaching man their evil ways. They were alert, aware, and afraid for their sin, striking and wiping out men in their wake. Man crying out to the heavens, "Where is God?" Depressed and humiliated, they, the fallen angels, called Nephilim, and their offspring, called Rephaim, preyed upon the booty of God's ornaments, men. Rapidly, like water coursing through a trumpet, or a stream blasting through a ram's horn, tingling, quivering, and growing dark, a whirring shadow of interaction culminating into the world economy and its interaction. Genesis 6, 1-4 again. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man, for he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Please note, verse 2, that the sons of God saw the daughters of the men, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Bible scholars are critical of this verse and are quick to move in one of two directions. First is Mark 12:25, when the Pharisees are posing questions to Jesus, attempting to catch him in error. For when they shall rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels which are in heaven. Bible scholars are quick to say that Jesus stated that the angels in heaven do not marry, therefore they could not take a wife. Nevertheless, these angels are the fallen angels discussed in Jude 1:6. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, these angels exited heaven, removed themselves from their first estate, and cohabited on earth with women. These fallen angels, as part of their sin, were no longer in heaven. The second course of action many Bible scholars will take is the Sethite theory. In the Sethite theory, it is said that the children from the righteous line of Seth called themselves the Son of God. These righteous ones, blessed of God, intermarried with the unrighteous descendants of Cain, thereby somehow creating giants of enormous height and stature, simply by mixing the righteous human with the unrighteous human. This theory has its roots from the begotten books of Eden, Book 2, Adam and Eve. As the story unfolds, Seth's descendants were tempted off the backside of the mountain of Eden by the descendants of Cain. However, even in these books, the fallen angels had relations with the daughters of men at the end of the story. Verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. We will be discussing giants that appear throughout the Bible. Recall that the Israelites who spied out the land of Canaan came back with tales of giants that made them feel like grasshoppers. Most will say the term giant is a figure of speech. You can find many sites on the internet giving average height and weight for a baby, all the way to 18 years of age. One website, www.babycenter.com, displayed average length 20.1 inches and 8.1 pounds. 3 months later, average length for a baby boy was 24.7 inches and 15.2 pounds. If you extrapolated that same increase in height and weight to age 18, without the DNA genes slowing down the process down at 4.6 inches and 9.5 pounds a month, the result would be 83 feet tall, human or person, 10 stories high, weighing just over a ton at 2,052 pounds. My son was 21 inches when he was born. Later, my son was sleeping in bed. I marveled at how big he was getting. I decided to measure him while he was still. I took his measurement and extrapolated it forward to age 18. My son was projected to be 65 feet tall. I was a proud dad and told all my friends. I was very disappointed that he is actually only 6 foot 2 inches tall. Obviously, something in his DNA triggered, as in all of us, and my son stopped growing. If that trigger was somehow turned off and my son continued to grow to 8 stories high, I would have felt like a very proud grasshopper beside him. Therefore, please allow no person to say to you that it is impossible for giants to have existed in biblical times. Sure, some of the pictures of giants on the internet can be fakes, but certainly not all. Further, critics will state that all the giants were wiped out in the flood. True, but more were produced after the flood. The NAS, Exhaustive Concordance, states, giants name of 2 peoples, one before the flood and one after the flood. Obviously, Goliath was after the flood, and we have already documented fallen angelic activity corrupting the human bloodlines. As far as men go, the angelic corruption affected more than just height. If you are new to the topic of giants, 2 Samuel 21:20 continues the description. And there was a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature, that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he was born to the giant. Please note that even though he was a giant of Nephilim and human descent, Goliath is still referred to in the Bible as a man. Obviously a physically corrupt, ungodly, wicked man. Other common giant characteristics include double rows of teeth and large skulls, some possibly cone-shaped. Regarding the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Who were these mighty men, men of renown? I remember asking that question of a teacher or professor when I was in high school many years ago. The professor answered my question with a question. Who do you know from that time period that you have read about? My reply was that it would have to be Hercules, Apollo, Zeus, Thor, etc. All the mighty stories and legends of the Norse gods, Greek gods, and Roman gods. They were all virtually the same gods with different names. Odin, the ruler of the Norse gods, Zeus, the ruler of the Greek gods, and Jupiter, the ruler of the Roman gods. My teachers always stated that myths and legends were passed down by word of mouth, and that they always had truth behind them. Webster's Dictionary. Myth. A usually traditional story of ostensibly historical events that serves to unfold part of the worldview of a people or explain a practice, belief, or natural phenomenon. Legend. A story coming down from the past, especially one popularly regarded as historical, although not verifiable. Is it possible that these angels came down to the earth, set themselves up as gods to be worshipped? There is a mysterious ancient text with ancient symbols written by a race known as the sons of a god. It sounds just like ancient astronauts without the music. You might want to turn that off and get more truth. It's called the Bible. This mysterious book states that is exactly what happened. Where is this set of fallen angels now? If there are 50,500,000 fallen angels, why assume Peter is talking about all of them? According to the Bible, 2 Peter 2:4. But if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah the 8th person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. The word hell in this case is interchangeable with the word Tartarus, or Tartaros in the Greek. It's just one of the links, or a trail markers, showing the path in our human history that these fallen angels, called the Nephilim, took to be recorded as mythological gods and their offspring as demigods. Tartarus is the great pit beneath the earth, what Jude and other Bible authors called under darkness or the abyss. For the Greeks, Tartarus was where the Titans were kept. The Titans were referred to in mythology as the elder gods overthrown by Zeus. According to myth, Zeus had a son named Apollo. Apollo is listed in both Greek and Roman mythologies. Apollo is the god of musical instruments, intellectual pursuits, healing, and the sun. Apollo replaced the Helios as the sun god or god of the sun. For those of you that have had an interest in ancient civilizations and archaeology, you know that the Egyptians worshipped the sun. The Egyptian sun god was Ra, pronounced Ra, R-A-H. Ra was depicted as a man with a bird's head. Resting on his head was the sun. Draped over the top of the sun was the serpent. The serpent's tail would drape down just above the neck of Ra's body, and the serpent's head would face the front just above the head. There are pictures then listed of the Mayan snake god, the Naga of India, the Chinese dragon. These two symbols, the serpent and the sun, dominate the worship of ancient man around the world, according to archaeologists. Moving from Egypt, the Romans and the Greeks in the Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere with the mound builders of North America, the Aztecs, and Maya of South and Central America. A person can spend hours on the internet reviewing pictures and reading books on ancient serpent mounds and pyramids built on every continent of the world by ancient civilizations. Just one note regarding the Mayan Temple. If you are not looking at a close-up picture, a walkway runs up each side of the temple. Bordering each walkway on both sides, running the length of the temple, is a serpent with the tail at the top and the head at the bottom. The serpent mound in Ohio, in the USA, there's a picture of, and the Mayan Temple. There's then a pyramid, a picture of the Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx. So here we have the serpent of old, the great dragon himself, and Apollo, the sun god, dominating world theology before the flood and after and into the future. Where is the biblical link for the sun god being called Apollo? Is there a biblical, mythological, and historical connection to a powerful angel demon god with a name similar to Apollo? Revelation 9:11. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Apollo and Apollyon are the same. Perhaps he has many names, Azazel in the Hebrew, possibly Thoth in Egyptian. In Revelation, the angel speaks to John and repeats himself or states it twice to reinforce what he is saying in verse 17:8. The beast that thou sawest was, meaning that he had reigned before, and is not. He was cast into the bottomless pit, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Please note that we are not chasing the Antichrist here. When you read the verse, please take note. The only people left on the earth when the Antichrist shows up are the unsaved. The only people here are those whose name is not written in the book of life. The time frame will be as Jesus stated, as in the days of Noah and Daniel 2:41 through 43, when they shall be marrying and giving each other in marriage, mingling themselves with the seed of men. The name Azazel is another biblical tie into the fallen angel story. You are like most Christians. You have never heard the name Azazel in your Christian walk, nor did you know that the common concept of the scapegoat came from Aaron and the Israelites. Leviticus 16:7 through 10, American Standard. And he shall take the two goats and set them before Jehovah at the door of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the two goats, one lot for Jehovah, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat upon which the lot fell for Jehovah, and offer him for his sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be set alive before Jehovah, to make atonement for him, to send him away for Azazel into the wilderness. This is where the concept of the scapegoat came from. Azazel, sometimes called Semyaza, was the leader of 10 captains of the 200 fallen angels mentioned in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, that came to earth and corrupted the human bloodline and most of the animals on the earth, according to the book of Jubilees and the book of Enoch. They arrived on a mountain called Mount Hermon in the area of Bashan, given to Manasseh. Have you ever heard of Mount Olympus, the home of the gods of Greece? This is a familiar pattern with many civilizations. Surprisingly, Mount Hermon is mentioned prominently, approximately 13 times, from the book of Deuteronomy to the Song of Solomon. Yet it seems no Christians are familiar with it, and that is a shame. After all, there is evil in the darkness. Certainly there are those of you who question or scoff at this information. There were soldiers of a great biblical king that faced down enemies single-handedly that were born of the people in the area. There will be more on Mount Hermon later. Again, the Bible is an amazing place to be. As a part of his punishment, described in Jasher and or Jubilees, Azazel was buried in an opening in the desert, or the entrance to the aforementioned Tartarus or abyss. If you recall, one of the questions in front of this book was there another reason why the Israelites walked in a circle in the desert for 40 years? When Moses and Aaron entered Egypt to ask for the release of the Israelites, not only did Jehovah defeat the gods of Egypt, Pharaoh, in his army, but he made a mockery of them. He defeated them and showed how weak they were and how he is the one true God. Then his trophy, God's chosen people, walked over the top of the desert where Azazel and his minions were imprisoned. Please pay attention if you are a Christian. Don't miss this. The tribes of the sons of God left the camp in order by tribe and set up the camp in order by tribe. Whenever God moved, the people of Israel moved. The tribes of Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh were ordered by Jehovah to place themselves on the north side of the Israel camp in a line. Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun were camped on the south side in the same fashion. Reuben, Simeon, and Gad were on the west, while Dan, Asher, and Naphtali were on the east side. In the center of the camp was the tabernacle and the Levites. At that time, when the campfires were burning there in population formation, would have been the most beautiful golden cross burning in the desert. Vive le Restance. Please refer to www.delusionresistance.org. David Ben Yaakov.